Today, we're going to be talking about the first half of chapter 7 and talk about talking. We're going to understand the importance of conversation and identify motives and types of interpersonal communication. So, I start you out with this question. If we were prevented from speaking to each other, would we stop communicating? Let's watch this video and let me know what you think.
There was a bridge that the North Vietnamese had built, and it was an essential part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, so it was a very important target. As I released the bombs, some lucky gunner got an exploding anti-aircraft round that hit my engine, and I knew I had to eject, and I did so. Part of our training in fighters was to go through a survival training program. And while I was there, I was in a class and a master sergeant happened to be the instructor, and he was explaining how in World War II, prisoners held by the Germans were able to communicate between two buildings by tapping on a water pipe. And as I was walking out of the class, the instructor was just beside me, and I said, "How did they send the dashes?" And he said, "Oh, I should explain. It was not the Morse code. It was a tap code. They were not teaching it as part of the program, but I just happened by chance to learn it from this instructor." So after I was shot down in North Vietnam, I was one of the very early shoot downs, and I was able to communicate that tap code to some other POWs. As we were moved from into other camps away from Hanoi, always someone took the tap code with them and was able to pass it on. So no matter where you went in the POW system in North Vietnam, if you heard this, the guy on the other side of the wall would, and you started the communication process. I guess the reason we all knew it was so important is it was a morale factor, of course, just to be able to communicate. We helped each other when someone was taken out and badly mistreated for days or whatever, and finally came back to his cell. He would be physically, mentally, emotionally almost a basket case. After his door was closed and the turnkey left, and the first thing he would hear is, that's GBU. And he would, take strength from that, knowing that we understood.
Bud had just been admitted that day to hospice, and Dory and I went in the other room to talk so that Smitty and Bud could have a time together. And in a few minutes, Smitty came out of the room and his eyes had welled up, and he was not actively crying, but I could tell it was right there, just ready to happen. And as we got in the car, Smitty said, the tears came down. He said, "You know what just happened?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "When I started to leave Bud, he reached up and grabbed my hand, and on the back of my hand he tapped GBU." And both of us kind of lost it at that point, because that code meant so much to them. And it still does.
As you can see in this short video, communication, even when impossible, finds a way. Communication is important. It's necessary for building and maintaining relationships, and it helps to create these interactive activities with other humans. Although we are kind of seeing a decline in face-to-face dialogue due to new technology and mediated technology. We have these needs and motives. It's physical, it's for our identity so that we know who we are and we know other people do. It's for social and it's practical. We want to ultimately have some control, affection, relaxation, pleasure, inclusion, and escape. I always like to focus on that control. We want to feel like we have some control over the world. We can't always feel like the world is just happening to us. That's part of our psyche. And so through communication, we can control the world. And that's so important. Through communication, we get that affection. We can relax, laugh. We feel included. And sometimes we can just escape. So what conversations do you look forward to? It could be something like radio shows or podcasts. Anybody have a work best friend that they absolutely love working with that maybe you don't even see that often outside of work? What about a little bit of gossip? Maybe it's just spilling the tea on celebrities. There's all sorts of conversations that we look forward to every day. And there's also conversations that we dread. Why do we dread these conversations? It could be something like small talk. Small talk can be hard for some people. Some others, it comes absolutely natural to because it's spontaneous and it's often the foundation of interpersonal relationships. So, what is conversation? Well, they're usually informal social interactions, although they can be highly formalized. For effective conversations, you must be comfortable speaking with others and have a desire to share real life experiences. And when we start talking about self disclosure, we'll talk more about that sharing. But ultimately, rules do dictate conversations. We have very specific rules and turn taking tactics and strategies that we use during conversations to affect it to flow well. What happens when somebody breaks those rules of conversation? Well, sometimes we just kind of want to avoid those people. Like, for example, the oversharer at the bus who talks about their medical issues and you have no idea who they are. We take the next bus. Am I right? Oh, look, that store. I need to go grab a drink. Miss that bus and not even worry about it. We have a lot of ways that we need to fall into these rules. So what are the rules? Well, there's certain structures for conversations. You've got the greeting, topic primer, heart of the conversation, preliminary processing, and the closing. For what it's worth, they don't always go perfectly in this order. However, this is the general stages of a conversation. You've got the greeting. It's just the way to begin. It'd be like, hey, good morning, professor. What's up, Bob? It could be that head nod. You know what I'm talking about? The head nod of Californians. What's up, right? What do we do when we receive a greeting? Often we absolutely feel like we need to give something back. Somebody waves at us, we wave back, right? If we wave at somebody else, they greet us back. This is just part of our socialization as humans. Then you've got the topic priming, and this is kind of the preview, the focus of the conversation. So it could be something like, hey, what are you doing on Friday night? Now check it out. We've all been asked this question and we're like, okay, wait a second, what's going on here? And we often want to dig a little bit deeper, right? For that preview, often the person asking that question is setting up the focus of the conversation or the heart of the conversation. If we're doing topic priming in order to prolong the conversation, we might ask a question, what are you studying and what do you want to be? Or what's your example of a perfect date? And as we know, it's always April 25th. But that's kind of just to suggest this is the way the conversation is going to move. If you've taken a public speaking class, your preview and your speeches do the exact same thing. So then we move on to the heart of the conversation. This is the focus. This is why we open the conversation. So if I asked you, what are you doing Friday night? We're about to find out, am I trying to ask you out on a date, or am I trying to get you to work for me, right? This is where we really dig in. On stage 4, that preliminary processing, we're going to process the information. Perhaps we're going back and forth on, well, if you want me to work for you on Friday night and I work on Sunday night, well, I'd want you to work for me on Sunday night so I get Saturday and Sunday off. And they go, oh, yeah, fine, okay, right? And you kind of go back and forth, and you're processing the information, you're determining what we learned, and then you've got the end of the conversation. There's a lot of different ways that we can signal the end of the conversation, right? It could be grabbing our keys and our hats, right? That's kind of a universal sign of I have to go. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll summarize the topics. They'll be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for working with me Friday night. I'm working for you on Sunday night, and I will email the boss and let them know, right? Hey, thanks again. There's that appreciation, right? And, or it could be, we got to get together and do this again. There's that desire to renew the contact at a later time. And these are all the stages of the closing. Now, we may merge steps or even skip steps, but most of the time we do follow this basic 5 steps. Next time you're having a conversation or you get a chance to listen to a conversation, it's a great thing to do. Now, we do have ways that we manage a conversation in the middle of it. And these are often known as turn-taking signals, right? So you've got like turn-maintaining signals, like, hold on, I just have one more thing to say. Turn-denying signals, it could be as simple as putting up their hand and saying, talk to the hand, right? Turn-yielding, what do you think? And it could be from the receiver. Heck, every time a student raises their hand and asks me a question, they are asking for that request to manage the conversation, to get in there. Or turn denying might be as simple as, no, go on, I want to hear more. No, keep on talking. He said what, right? And trying to get you to keep on talking. So we definitely see this kind of turn-taking devices used all the time. Here's a very famous example of a turn-taking device. Let's check out how Kanye West maintains his turn at conversation in this Taylor Swift video.
For every MTV event, there was a little controversy, like during Taylor Swift's award acceptance, as Kanye interrupted.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time.
You see how his hands physically went up to prevent her from trying to grab back the mic. Not that she tried to. Notice how he turned away in order to maintain control of that conversation. And then when he was done, he shrugged and he handed back over the mic. It's a great example of turn taking. So let's talk a little bit about self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is so important in maintaining positive relationships. Self-disclosure is important in creating intimacy, which is a measure of closeness, right? And we need that self-disclosure, at least in Western cultures, in order to maintain that intimacy. So what is self-disclosure? Well, it's this purposeful sharing of information about ourselves. And it is the key to reducing uncertainty and fostering connection. Consider this. What happens when somebody shares a part of themselves with you? Often we reciprocate in kind, which is a little different than the one-uppers. We're all familiar with the one-uppers. Somebody's like, oh, well, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about my day. Not so much that, but it's a way to show that we empathize and that we sympathize and we can understand where the person is coming from. But think of it this way. What happens if you share too much information about yourself to somebody who does not share back? We feel a little powerless, maybe a little bit exposed. We don't really like that. And on the conversion, if somebody shares too much information with us, more than we want to share with them, we also feel uncomfortable. It's like that guy at the bus stop trying to share their medical information with you. We don't feel okay about knowing this information. There has to be this balance in self-disclosure to create that sense of intimacy. And it's helpful for social integration, but also impression management. So when we want somebody to think of us a certain way, we tend to self-disclose certain parts of information about ourselves. Oh, well, when I worked in the mechanics garage, right? Or when I was in the Navy, right? And it's also true that it can include like flattery. Oh, well, I was never that smart when I did A, B, and C. So all of these things can help manage relationships through self-disclosure. As I said, there's a lot of benefits of self-disclosure. It can be a tool to get to know each other. And if one self-discloses, it's easier for a partner to reciprocate, but there's also that risk of too much vulnerability, where we're setting ourselves up, or we could set ourselves up for rejection and criticism. So we want that norm of reciprocity. We expect self-disclosure equally in relationships, and we feel safer with similar disclosures from others. Otherwise, that relationship breadth and depth might be affected. Well, what do I mean by that? Let's go ahead and talk about social penetration theory. Sometimes it's known as peeling the onion. Thank you very much, Shrek, for making that part of modern vernacular, right? It was developed by Altman and Taylor, and it describes relational closeness via breadth and depth of disclosure. So when you're in a new relationship, that relationship doesn't have a lot of depth nor a lot of breadth. Like it's not very large. If you just know somebody at work, well, we kind of acknowledge that we just know them at work. We don't really know them very well, but with time and intimacy, that self-disclosure, it can deepen. So here's a great example of it. Now, it's even called peeling the onion right there. You've got the outside, which is a little superficial, the intimate, the personal, and the core. But let's kind of look at it in an actual onion shape. I kind of like this better. So you may know somebody really well in their dating and their studies of schools, or maybe a little bit of their tastes, and you might know them very, very well when it comes to dating, exactly who they're looking for, their fears and their fantasies, but you may not know about their worldview. So just because you know part of it doesn't mean you're going to know all of it. And in fact, most people will say it's very difficult to ever know anyone 100%, even ourselves. So we've got this nature of disclosures, and it can feel uncomfortable if we're disclosing too much in that onion too soon in the relationship. They have to be kind of time related. So you're not going to go straight to that core self 2 weeks into a new relationship. It's probably going to be much closer to, intimate, and then moving on to personal. But whether or not you ever let anybody into your core, well, you'll have to decide that. So what do we talk about? We talked about talking. We understand the importance of conversations, identify motives, and types of interpersonal communication. Reach out if you've got any questions, and we can start a conversation.